Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On this 22nd day of October 2021, I trust that you are well. From wherever you're tuning in from, welcome to the broadcast. This is The Talk Point, where we get to talk and converse on all national issues. And today we shall be breaking down for you just two things. One, we shall be unpacking Uhuru's bag of goodies and the interventions he talked about during the Mashujaa Day celebrations, as well as understanding why there's so much political tension and so much tension between the judiciary and the executive. So you want to stick around for all these topics that we shall be diversing and talking about on our segment today on the Talk Point. And to join me to try to analyze and get their insight on this issue, on my immediate right, I'm joined by Wycliffe Alutalala, who is an MCA aspirant that will be vying under the ANC ticket. Thank you very much for making time. And on my farthest right, I'm joined by John Mukoya, who is an ODM youth leader. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for making time for us. And just to sort of give you a recap of some of the issues that President Uhuru Kenyatta talked about, we had the food security, where some money will be allocated to the tea, coffee, and sugar sector. We also have the universal health coverage, where issues to do with health, about 3.2 billion shillings shall be redirected or rechanneled to that department to help in the construction of 50 new level 3 hospitals. In the education sector, about 8 billion shillings to help in the expansion of the CBC infrastructure. Energy and petroleum products, where there shall be a reduction cost of electricity by 30%, that is by December 24th, as well as the task force shall develop a framework for the stabilization of petroleum prices, just to cushion Kenyans from the high cost of living and the high cost of fuel prices that have been witnessed for the last couple of months. We also have in the digital and finance and sector, when it comes to access to credit for the SMEs, as well as the 10 billion shillings for the Kazi Mtani project. These are just some of the interventions that President Uhuru Kenyatta talked about that will be put in place just to ensure that the development record in the country is still something to talk about. And I'd love to really just get your thoughts, and I'll begin with you, Mr. Alutalala. What is it that stood out for you from that, Mashujaa Day celebration speech?
Okay, personally, what I would say about the president's speech is that given the timing of the speech, it was purely a political statement that the president was trying to make. Basically, if you look at what the president is proposing, and you look at what the president has been doing for the last 9 years, you will realize that the statement was good, but with a lot of political connotations. Because if you ask yourself, of the 5 or so major areas that the president touched, specifically, let me talk about the issue of agriculture. It is just yesterday when we saw the management of the National Cereals Board appearing before a parliamentary committee and saying that our grain reserves are empty. Now, this is coming against the backdrop of a very huge investment that was done in the famous Galana Kulalu irrigation project, where over 10 billion shillings was pumped into that project. To date, we are yet to know how much was harvested from that particular project and where it went to. Now, so as much as we talk about, like now what the president said, he allocated 1 billion to the coffee sector, 1.5 billion to the sugar sector, 1 billion to the tea sector, another 1.5 billion to the dairy sector. Yes. All these are good interventions. But the bottom line of all this is that the success of any of these projects shall depend on how well we manage the resources. Because, to be frank with you, the problem we are having in this country is pilferage. Corruption is our major problem. So even if we were to allocate how much money on whatever project, unless we tackle the issue of corruption, I don't see much changing. Secondly, there is the issue of the budgeting. All these allocations and all these promises have budgetary implications. I'm not very sure kwamba all those amounts of money that have been promised for those particular sectors is factored in the budget. And if the monies are not factored in the budget, because what I know, already we have a budget deficit. Yes. And by June next year, in fact, the budget deficit will be growing bigger. Because as you are aware, just recently the parliament passed a bill to reduce VAT on fuel. And that was after the uproar from the public about the fuel prices that were almost hitting 150 per litre. Now, what that means is that the Treasury is going to lose around 25 billion because of that reduction in the VAT on petrol. So if we are reducing the taxation on fuel, which is going to reduce the budget to Treasury by around 25 billion, and we are allocating these monies for new projects, then the question comes in, how are we going to fund this? So looking at it cleanly, it will either mean we come up with a supplementary budget through Parliament so that we can get exactly where to get this money to do those projects. So to me, the projects are good, promises are good, but they were more of political, and I'm waiting to see their implementation.
Yes, Mr. Mukoya, would you agree with just mere political statements that the president was making?
I'll agree and not agree at the same time. You look at whatever the president said and all those promises, and I think the president's statement was well thought, because as a head of state, he could not have just come out to start giving statements and allocating money to these places and whatever. It was thoroughly taken care of before he did that. Out of the statement the president gave, and whatever touched me was actually on the Kazi Mtaani. I don't think if a president will come on a Mashujaa Day and promise the youth of this country, who are actually the largest number, and tell them that this thing is coming back, the Kazi Mtaani, and then he goes out and says, no, it's not going to come out. It has to come out, and want to give benefit of doubt, no doubt to the president that actually he knew what he was saying, and the youth of the country who are doing this Kazi Mtaani, and currently they were home, and right now we have a curfew that has been lifted. When this job starts, we also expect, we don't just expect money to be mentioned, that the money is going to the youth. We expect that the president, that this time round when this job of youth Kazi Mtaani is going to be rolled out, this money has to reach the youth, because in the previous Kazi Mtaani that has happened, you find that the youths have been working, but at the end of the day, their pay doesn't come on time. Like someone works for a month or 3 weeks, you are not paying, and you are giving them menial jobs like to open the trenches and whatever, and you are not paying them on time. This time round, I hope the president is going to take care of that, or he has thought it well out for him to return this money. When you go back to agriculture, like I come from a sugar zone, which is a sugar belt. I look at 1.5 billion as a drop in the sea. 1.5, like a company like Mias Sugar, it needs like 5 billion for it to be reinstated. I heard the president talk about that it be used to pay farmers. So I do not know, or I want men to understand that maybe these farmers only belong to, there'll be the Chemeli, the Moroni farmers, because when you talk about 1.5 billion, it's a bit low.
So in your thoughts, more money should be
allocated. Like we have a dead company, and a giant company called Mias Sugar. If this money, it will be very clear that, you know, we have farmers in Mumias who are never paid also. And when you say you have given out 1.5 billion to pay farmers and to bring out this dead factory, then we are talking about the smaller factories, but not a factory like Mumias. So I actually feel that more money should be put in that sector. And the only thing that the president could have done to the people who are come from the sugar zone, actually the government could actually ensure that it has allocated enough money to a company like Mumias for it to reinstate, because it was covering a larger percentage. You look about employment, so many people lost employment, even those youths lost employment. That could also be another way of creating employment to those who lost their jobs in this factory. Then you come back and look at another thing. You talked about the health sector. I congratulate him for that. And for sure, we cannot just write off the president. We look at those hospitals that have come out during COVID time. Like when you talk about here, like in Nairobi, under the Metropolitan, we have had a hospital in Kibra. We have another hospital here in Embakasi South, there was an hospital, and these slum areas. I think that's a good idea because now it makes it easier for people to access health. If these hospitals are going to come up, more hospitals are going to come up, we are not going to have a problem again because the pandemic has also taught us on where to go. So I feel there the president has also scored, and if it's really this money is going to come out, also the county governments should also incorporate what they're doing with whatever the president has ordered to come out so that we can have better health services on ground and have better services offered to the common man on ground.
Yes, but we're looking at our financial budget for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. We already have a deficit of 940 billion shillings, and there's only few options on how to fund the country. That is just through loans, whether it's domestic borrowing or foreign borrowing. So I mean, when you're talking of allocating some more funds to these industries, don't you think it will be a little bit painful for the taxpayer?
I believe that even allocating more funds to these industries, like talk about an industry of mumias, the one I've talked about, I believe those are also taxpayers. If the money is allocated to that factory and that factory is reinstated, those people in the sugar belt, they also pay taxes. They also need to benefit from the taxes that we are having. We talk about that we already have a deficit. Fine, we have a deficit. We agree, we have a deficit. But before him to go and read whatever he read, he must have looked at it, and it must have been thought out where these funds are going to come out. He has to feel actually stop the loopholes of corruption. The money is there. It's not that the money is not in this country. The money is in this country. What is happening is that there's a lot of corruption, and there are so many loopholes. Talk about NCBB. Today we are talking about we don't have the full grain is not there. Where? And when we're having farmers, I was in Eldoret the other day. We have farmers who have maize that is just rotting in the stores and wherever. We are being told that there's no maize. This is just corruption. Stop corruption, get the money. When it comes now to funding projects that actually affect the common man, we talk about budget. This budget is there and has been there. Why are we talking about budget when it comes to the common man? The common man, there is a lot of money in this country, and there's a lot of money in government that is just spilling off into pockets of people. That money, the president has to actually tap into that money and ensure this money goes to these projects. We shall appreciate that.
Yes, and Kenya will need a supplementary budget, and this is something that our lawmakers will have to go back to the National Assembly and talk about, just to have this funds, this 25 billion shilling stimulus package, be rechanneled to the different sectors. I mean, what happens if the lawmakers don't, agree to the supplementary budget?
Even as we speak about having a supplementary budget, it is important for us to remember that as we speak, we've hit our debt ceiling. Our public debt as we speak now stands at over 7.8 billion. Yeah, I think 7.8 trillion.
Yeah, trillion.
Because our ceiling is 9 trillion.
Yes.
Now, government and treasury has been toiling around with this idea of increasing the debt ceiling. Because now where we have reached, even IMF is unable to recommend any further debt to Kenya. Actually, if Kenya was a corporate, we should be going for liquidation. If, let's say, Kenya was Safaricom, and what we are earning today vis-a-vis what we are borrowing, the company should be going under receivership. That's where we are as a country. So as we talk about coming up with a supplementary budget, we need to ask ourselves, all this money that we are borrowing, where is it going to? Because you cannot be borrowing daily. Actually, to date, we are almost borrowing 60% of our expenditure. We have instances whereby we are even borrowing to pay salaries. You see, any economy that can work for its people cannot operate on borrowing. So I know the only viable option that Treasury has is to come up with a supplementary budget, which will be taken to Parliament, and upon confirmation or passage through Parliament, then we can see where to plug some of these monies within. But if it is going again for another loan, foreign loan, that tells you that as at the time President Uhuru Kenyatta will be exiting office, we may be in a debt that may be perhaps paid more, maybe by the next 3 presidents of Kenya. Because if you look at where Kibaki left us, when President Kibaki left the presidency, our public debt was 1.2 trillion. Today, we are talking of 7.8 trillion. Almost triple. And you know, when you talk about a trillion, we are not talking about small money. This is money that we are going to pay for the next, like, 25 years. So, why I say this president's speech, as my friend puts it, I know it was thought out, but its practicality and implementation may be purely political. So for example, when you talk about the Kazi Mtaani project, he's already mentioning out that the previous phase of Kazi Mtaani, we have had instances whereby there was money. There was a budget allocation for that project, but the youth were not being paid. And if they were being paid, they were not being paid on time. That tells you there was some loophole somewhere within the system that was not working. So even before we implement another phase 2 or 3 of the Kazi Mtaani, there are things that we need to do. For example, I'm sorry to say that some of the works that the youth were being assigned to do were not adding value. And actually some of these monies, to me, might have been wasted. Because you could go to some of these areas, you just find youth idling. But at the end of the day, they are supposed to be paid. So we actually need to know what are we actually going to assign these youth to do so that we also have value for money. It's not just about dishing out money. We need value for the money. So for me, I have no problem with the promises. And as he has rightly put it, that money that was allocated to the sugar sector is peanuts. And remember, it is allocated to the sugar sector, not one specific sugar factory. Sugar sector. Sugar sector has a lot of factories and has a lot of agencies that work. We have sugar board and all those other things. So 1.5 billion for the entire sugar sector is very small money. Because even if you are to divide equally among the factories that are existing, if you divide among the 5 major factories, we are talking of around 300 million. 300 million is not even enough to pay the electricity bill at Mia Sugar.
It's not.
Electricity bill alone is not enough. So we appreciate what the president has promised, but we believe that our parliament and treasury shall come up with ways of raising this money without adding additional taxes, because as we speak, Kenyans, we are overtaxed. Yeah. And that is one thing that I expect the incoming president to really look into. We are overtaxed. So we would not want another situation whereby we are coming up with these expensive commercial loans just to finance these projects in the name of the president having a legacy as he goes out.
Yes, and you've mentioned something important about, financing phase 2 or phase 3 of a project when phase 1 is not even complete. So when we come back after this break, we shall be talking about just the education sector and the energy and petroleum industry, and just how we are planning on financing phase 2 and phase 3 when phase 1 is not even completed. So we take that break, but we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Talk Point, and we're still on Uhuru's bag of goodies and what he talked about and the interventions he talked about during the Mashujaa celebrations and just how practical they are and whether they are sustainable. And before we took this break, we were talking about financing phase 2, phase 3 of a project when phase 1 is still not complete, and we'd begin with the education sector. 8 billion shillings to expand on the CBC infrastructure, even as you know the premier class will be getting to secondary schools come 2023, but there's still been an issue with the CBC rollout. Don't you feel probably let us work with the rollout to ensure that there's this smooth transition before we talk of expanding the infrastructure?
Actually, on the issue of CBC, you find that all parents, and we are parents too, that it was not right for the president. Fine, it tells students are graduating to go to senior secondary or junior secondary. But the CBC itself, it is still having a problem. Now, you wonder why it is being forced instead of it doing the rollout first before you add more money on the project. That's where sometimes we find that the government fails, and the president, I don't know, he talks about maybe he has been informed that this one, we are not talking about classes. You know, when they are talking about buildings, they are talking about the infrastructure. We are not interested in the infrastructure first. We are interested in the process. That when this pupils, you are talking about graduating to actually junior secondary, what is happening in that process to ensure that even the process itself, most parents are finding it as a baggage. It is heavy on parents. It is even heavy on the same students. We are talking about ensuring that these students graduate and go to those buildings. You can have the buildings, but what you are feeding the children is not what is going to come out and the intended purpose of the CBC. So to me, I feel that it was not necessary to have the allocation of the money, to have the structures before the first, working on the process of how these structures are going to be. Just on the same thing, I'll still go back on the issue of the youth and on the Kazi Mtaani. There is also still a lapse. We are talking about Kazi Mtaani. It's not that all youths perform that Kazi Mtaani. What about these other youths who do not participate in the Kazi Mtaani? The government and all governments have, to be a youth in this country has been a curse, because everything to do with the youth is just a curse. Any government and any place, whenever youths are talked about, they are believed someone has a degree. You tell that person to go and pick a jembe to actually open a drainage. You are already demeaning the same education this person went to school to study. We are not saying that those jobs are bad. Like when they were implementing Kazi Mtaani, they should have come out also very clearly on, just as my friend has said, most of these youths, they go outside just to report on duty. Many that have opened a drainage, you find that the drainage is complete, but they have to be there until evening just to pass a day. It is not because that these youths enjoy to go and do that. It is because they do not have any other option, which the president to me could be, they could look for more money, or that the same money to be put into SMEs to help these youths have another meaningful job. Because how long will Kazi Mtaani come and go? Because we do not know the next president if he's going to come out or she is going to come out with this Kazi Mtaani. Does it mean that after the Kazi Mtaani that has been rolled out this time round, when it ends, are we going to wait for another Mashujaa Day to come for us to be announced that there's going to be another Kazi Mtaani? The priorities of the youths in this country has never been put on table. And as I have said it, to be a youth in this country is a curse. It's like everything that doesn't have any meaning has to be directed on the youth. And if it is given in equal, it doesn't benefit those youths in the way they should be. Go back to the sector of the curfew and whatever. We appreciate he has lifted the curfew. That also killed the economy of these youths. You find that we had waiters, we had barmaids, we had bouncers who are working in these restaurants. When you had the curfew, those who are affected mostly are youths. You never find any old person participating in the BAM and whatever. But when they were allocating money during this COVID, we heard that there was money for the elderly. The youth, if you are a youth in this country, you remain to be a curse, which has to go away. And we are talking that it has to be stopped. When money is being allocated, youths come bottom of the table. And even you look at what is being allocated to those youths, you find that it's not meaningful. Like, money was allocated to the old people. These old people are being taken care of by us who are young. Because you are sending my mother money, or my father money, who is almost 70 years or whatever. But the same people still depend on me, who has lost a job, who cannot pay rent, who cannot sustain himself or herself by the same money. So these projects that are coming up, many in government, we'll wish, and we ask those who are actually participating to become in the next government, to look on the issue of the youth. Specifically, they should offer them meaningful jobs and meaningful projects, so that it doesn't appear like you keep a youth on the road, and the same youth who are struggling on the sun, you don't pay him on time. We have single mothers, we have young mothers who do not have anywhere to go. We have young boys. You'll find them resulting into theft, into robbery, and other things. We are being forced there. I'll say, and I want to repeat, that there is money in this government. There is a lot of money in this government. We have ministries that are lying with money, which after every financial year, they return that money. Why can't that money be picked and actually pumped into these other projects that we are having the youth? We have a lot of money in this country. Talking about we have a debt and whatever, there's no country that doesn't have a debt. Even America itself has debts. We are not exceptional. What we need to do is that we pick money from, if you don't have a solution, then we are going to offer a solution. We know there's money in some of these ministries, and we can tell you this ministry has this money. The money is just lying down. Can that money be picked and pumped into these projects that now the president has promised, so that as that supplementary budget is being taken care of? We are not going to go and do borrowing. There is money. It's not that we don't have money. You know, when we talk about the country has a debt, we are not dying. Kenya will continue. And we cannot say that we are more a failed state. We are not a failed state. We have money in this country. Stop the loopholes of corruption. Get the money. Go for taxes, and to the right people. You know, when the government talks about taxes, the taxes are done on a common man who doesn't have any shilling. People who have billions don't pay taxes in this country. They evade taxes in their own ways. So go for those taxes. Go for these ministries that have money that is lying into their docket. Return that money to these projects, and then we shall have the projects being done.
Yes. The Energy and Petroleum Ministry has really been on the spotlight since, I'd say, the month of August, September in this month, because of this high cost of fuel prices, despite the fact that it was reduced some recent days. But really, the president talks about, you know, cutting the cost of electricity by 30% by December 24th. And it was gazetted very recently by the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority that, you know, October has the highest tariffs in terms of electricity costs. So people will be paying more this month. I mean, is it that he's just ignoring this sort of international prices of fuel and how they're being regulated internationally, or he just wants the goodwill for the people, but it's just so hard to achieve this 30% reduction in terms of electricity costs?
Now, before I come to the issue of energy and petroleum, let me just comment on what my friend just talked a few seconds ago about the issue of young people. Now, this issue of young people in this country, okay, I may not use the word curse, but I think they are guinea pigs in this political chess game. Because every government that comes into place, you will always hear them talk about young people. I remember in 2013, there was this famous slogan, we are moving from digital to analog.
Moving from analog to digital.
Or analog to digital, sorry.
Yes.
And the youth were promised so many things, including laptops, including free Wi-Fi,
yes,
including so many other things that was supposed to be all over. 10 years down the line, because you're entering the 10th year, none of those things came into place.
And it's actually still the same.
Yes.
Now, actually, the same people who promised this free Wi-Fi, free tablets, are now promising a new form of technology called the wheelbarrow.
Yes.
Now, this is a fallacy that must be dealt with, and it has to be called by its true name. That's what we call political conmanship. You cannot be someone who promised me a laptop in 2013 And now in 2021, you are now telling me I don't need a laptop. Now I need a wheelbarrow. Now, the issue of youth and the various economic models now being peddled around, to me, they are just death traps meant to lure young people to support those particular politicians. Because you cannot tell me about, for example, when you tell me that now this time around we are coming with a model called bottom-up. Bottom-up, to me, is already there. Because if you go to government today, we have a lot of funds that have been devolved. We have youth funds, we have women enterprise fund, we have CDF, we have all these funds.
Yes.
They are accessible to young people. So you cannot tell me that now we are coming up with another model that is going to revolutionize the country, and yet you are not telling these youth that you, as young people, you need to form groups, go to the Office of Youth Affairs, get these youth funds. Now, if you go to the youth fund, for example, you will realize that there is a lot of money that is hanging in some counties and some areas. There are areas in this country where this money just lies there for a whole year and it is taken back to the treasury. So what we are lacking in this country is honest leadership. A leadership that says what it means and means what it says. Because we are in a situation whereby we are giving a lot of promises, but our implementation rate is close to 50%. The other 50% is not implemented.
But would you say the wheelbarrow, slogan and how, and actually there are questions about whether there's really a difference between the 6,000 shillings monthly stimulus package and the wheelbarrow that costs about 2,000 shillings. Isn't it just one and the same thing?
Now, I just mentioned one model. But if you ask me, even the 6,000 narrative is also just another fallacy. First of all, if you go to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, almost 21 million youth are unemployed in Kenya. So if you are to give 6,000 shillings, even to the 2 million that are being said, we can't sustain that budget. I've listened to the best economists of this country on several TV interviews. None of them has justified that we are able to sustain that budget. And you cannot tell me there is a donor who can fund you to give money to people just that way. So that is a model that we will perhaps need more time to interrogate and understand it properly, how it is being, how it intends to be rolled out. Because currently as we speak, we have this money for the elderly people. Now, which is now under the Ministry of Labor. You see, the elders who are on that program are around 200,000 countrywide. And each one gets around 2,000, 3,000 per month. But if you do your research properly, most of these elderly people never get that money. And if they get that money, they don't get it on time. And we are talking of 200,000 elderly people. So when you talk about giving 6,000 to 2 million households, you can do your math and then ask yourself, where will this money come from? I have heard another narrative saying that money will just top up on what is currently being done through the elderly people. But the question is, what is hindering government to effectively discharge this money for the elderly people that can now give us an assurance that if we scale up these numbers to 2 million, it will be effective? And now that brings us to the question of implementing phase 3, 4 of a project when the first phase or second phase has not succeeded. What comes out is here. And this is a serious problem in this country. Even at the counties, we have areas even in our constituencies where you find that a former MP started a project. Now, when we elect a new MP, he doesn't complete the projects that were done by the former MP in the name of, those are not my people. Forget, not without remembering that the money that was used on that particular project is government money. It was not money for that MP. So you will find several projects lying incomplete, but starting new projects. That is part of what we are calling wastage of public funds. So the issue of completing of projects before you go for a new project is very important. And it is something that has to be insisted. If you read the Auditor General's reports, every year, the issue of incomplete projects is always mentioned, and very little is talked about it. Now, on the issue of petroleum, the issue of petroleum in this country, I think from the many sittings that have been done in Parliament and other government agencies, what is coming out clearly is that our problem is purely just corruption. Because I heard one economist saying one day that if you look at the landing price of petroleum products in this country, is around 60 shillings. So you wonder, from 60 shillings, which is the cost of petrol when it lands in Kenya at Mombasa, it goes to 140 something or 130 something. Now today, if you paid for power, these power tokens, if you buy tokens worth 100 shillings, for example, you will be given tokens worth 44 shillings. 66 shillings is tax. And we have like 7 taxes. If you read that bill, we have like 7 taxes. And most of these taxes, if you read keenly, you will realize it is just double taxation. So the problem that we are having on the issue of petroleum is purely our tax regime. It is just the taxation that needs to be looked into, and the issue of corruption at KPLC. I don't understand how a company that is a monopoly, a company that does not have a competitor, can make a loss. KPLC does not have a competitor in this country. It is the only company that supplies power to the entire country. But you read their financial statements, you are being told they made a loss. And not a loss of 10 bob, a loss of billions. So what that tells you is that the issue with our electricity problems, the issue of our with our petroleum problems is just purely corruption.
I'd love to get your thoughts, really, when it comes to energy and petroleum products and the sort of crazy taxes. Don't you think the problem again is with the lawmakers, because they're the ones who regulate these taxes, VAT, and all this excise duty? Don't you think the lawmakers are sort of causing a problem also for the president to achieve this reduction cost of electricity by 30%?
Maybe before I answer that, I'll want to make a rebuttal on the issue of the economical model, that we have the wheelbarrow and we have the 6,000, because it will be so unfair if I will not talk about what my party leader is proposing of the 6,000. Maybe we are not understanding what he's saying. I've been with him and I've worked with him. He has spoken these things while I listen. First of all, he talks about giving 6,000 to households that do not have anything. We're not talking about every youth. We are talking about vulnerable families that do not have any person in the family employed or have any meaningful job. He has never been given power. He's talking about a model. Give him power. He says he knows where to get the money. First of all, he says that he will get the money from all the corruption deals that have been happening in this country. He talks about 600 billion being lost through corruption monthly. When this money the same money that is going to pick from these loopholes where corruptions go back to that energy you are talking about, there's still corruption there. There is money to give these households. Let us not do a mathematics, because it is perception that our party leader, Raila Amolo Odinga, who I believe is the next president anyway, that he is going to give every household 6,000. Differentiate that. We are talking about vulnerable families.
No, he's talking of 2 million households.
It failed. 2 million households is okay. Because even if we talk about 2 million households, it is possible. Because 2 million households is almost 50 billion, around there, or 60 billion. That one is possible.
Per month.
Unlike you take money, take to Aurora and Kimarer, someone pockets around 14 billion, an individual. What about this money, whether it is 100 billion to this household, but there must be vulnerable households. Secondly, when loopholes of corruption shall be closed down, it means that we shall have more people coming in to invest in the country. We shall have many people having factories in the country, interested to invest in the country, meaning that those who do not even have employment will have now an opportunity to get employed in those companies. We don't bring actually politics on models, but we can bring politics on a model that we are being proposed of actually a wheelbarrow and a bottom-up. We talk about bottom-up, meaning that we are having funds. That's as I said, we already have funds on ground. You cannot talk about a model and you are in power right now. Can you implement that? Because you have the right, you have the will, you are in power today. What makes you promise that it's going to be done in 2022? Why not now? And why should we be promised about tomorrow? Why are we not living today? Who says that I'm going to be there tomorrow? When you have an opportunity in any office right now, ensure that you use that office now. Kenyans, we have had a time and opportunity since the memorial of being given promises that this one is going to happen, this one is going to happen. We are going to judge you by what you do in office now, not by what you do in office then. You are a deputy president in office today. You are crying on podium every day. I will do, I will do. Why not do it now? I live a story of models there. And I tell you that 6,000 is possible. And I'm very sure that our party leader, who is Raila Amolo Odinga, will have this money, because give him the opportunity. He has never been given the opportunity. Let's give him the opportunity and ask him about the 6,000 to this household. Go back to he has talked about the elderly. The program of the elderly, for sure, we have had a problem of corruption. I still go back to the corruption. The chief and those who are offering the money, there's just corruption. And we are talking about stopping corruption. If you stopped corruption, even those elderly will receive their money on time. We receive that money. What has made it so difficult that we have our elderly people even queuing up, and some of them ending up even dying on the line? Why? It is because of corruption. The biggest problem of this country is corruption.
But how do we end this?
The corruption you can only end by having right leaders in office. You can only have a leader who believes in fighting corruption in office, and the corruption will end. But if you still have leaders who still thrive in corruption and you expect to end corruption, then I'm sorry, it's not going to happen anytime soon. We shall continue talking. We know our leaders who believe that corruption can end. We know them and we believe in them. We are not talking about, let's not talk about only my party leader. We know you put this leader here, he will perform. We have CSS here, who we have seen them perform, stopped whatever that used to happen in certain ministries, and they have actually performed. Stop corruption, money will flow to the people. Continue with having wrong leaders in office, corrupt leaders in office, corruption will thrive, and will thrive on a larger percentage. On the lawmakers, as you talk about taxation, you know, I've had an opportunity sometime maybe to listen and to hear what is happening. Our lawmakers can make it difficult for the president. Again, it still goes to corruption, because some of these people need to be given handouts for these things to go through. We should not continue saying that some of these lawmakers, some of them are there not because that they're too special. And they stay there behaving like demagogues. These bills, this taxation, this not enabling the president to actually perform his duties. It is time for our lawmakers of 2022. If we want these things also to go, we want to go and look at and analyze each one. Which committee did you use to sit? Where were you? What did you do? And then 2022 is coming. Use your opportunity to send all these people packing. But now, again, we still go back to parties. We still go back to tribalism. This one is one of our own. When he's eating, we are eating. He's eating alone.
But really, yes. Recently when the MPs were in Parliament actually debating on how they will ensure that the taxes are reduced,
yes.
About 80 MPs were
yes.
in Parliament.
Yes.
The rest, most of them walking around with our leaders. Don't you think it's also a question of priority?
You know, Cynthia, just to cut him short, it is wrong for us to come to such a serious show and mislead Kenyans. My friend here says his party leader is promising 6,000 shillings for 2 million households, which are very vulnerable, which is a good thing. And he puts it at around 50 billion. Now, we are talking about 50 billion per month. Annually, we are talking of 500 and almost 10 billion. The truth of the matter is that is not practically possible.
Why is it?
It is not practically possible. Because even look at our budget allocations per ministry. Do you know we have ministries in this country whose annual budget is 25 billion per year? Then you are telling me you will give 50 billion to 2 million households per month. It's not possible.
We lose 600 billion through corruption. It is very possible what my party leader is saying. Let us be real. Let us be practical. If we lose 600 billion through corruption, and we are talking about 50 billion, I don't see anything per month. And we are talking about 600 billion monthly getting lost.
You know, it is good to have faith, but the good Bible says, faith without action is dead. The truth of the matter is,
you can only have action when you are in office.
These people we are talking about are not going to be born in 2022. They have been here. We had the famous Kazi kwa Vijana project when Raila was the prime minister. We know the math during that project, and we know how it ended. So talking about corruption and how you can end it is not just a story. When Mwai Kibaki became president in 2007, in 2008, just through one act of parliament, he changed something in this country that we have never forgotten to date. He just zero-rated tax on motorcycles. Today, the border sector is earning this country 321 billion per year, according to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. So what we need in this country are not stories. We need practical, tested solutions.
Yes, yes, and this is a topic that can have its own episode, because we can go on and on about the dynamics of the 6,000 monthly stipend and the wheelbarrow dynamics. So we can talk about it on another episode, really, and I'd love to invite you again to talk about this. But we take a quick break. When we come back, we shall be diving into exactly what is happening within the judiciary and the executive, as the judiciary has decided to obliterate each and every decision the executive has made. So we take that break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Talk Point, and we now want to shift our focus to the judiciary and the executive, and just how the judiciary is literally obliterating every decision that the executive has made. And just to put it out to you, some of those decisions, including the chief administrative secretary positions that were nullified, the Building Bridges initiative as well, with the big question was the judiciary ombudsman and whether it would affect the independence of the judiciary. We also had the question, the judiciary actually questioned the formation of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, declaring that it was illegal, as well as it was formed without the knowledge of the County Assembly of Nairobi. We also have the director of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, John Mbadi, cannot attend cabinet meetings as he was barred by the courts as well. Now recently, yesterday, the appointment of the 40 judges, with the 6 rejected judges who are set to be appointed within the next 14 days. And the High Court has ordered President Uhuru Kenyatta to appoint them without failure. And now all eyes shift to the Chief Justice Martha Koome, as well as just exactly the role of the Attorney General. I mean, the AG is the chief legal advisor of the government and the president as well. But with all these fails at the courts, one has the right to question, what is the AG doing?
Okay, before I come to the issue of the AG and the issue of judiciary versus the state, I want to make it clear to Kenyans that, as I said earlier, this is a serious show. and we must inform Kenyans accordingly and truthfully. On the issue of our MPs and their performance vis-a-vis the bills they pass, it is on record that when the VAT Act was being passed to put VAT and excise duty on fuel, the ODM MPs are on record to have supported that bill and ganged together with the Jubilee MPs who are pro-handshake to support taxation on fuel prices, on fuel, sorry. So what you saw the other day in Parliament, the same ODM MPs pretending to be feeling for Kenyans was actually political gimmicks. The problem we are in today is courtesy of ODM and Jubilee MPs who passed that bill in Parliament. It is on record. You can go to the parliamentary Hansard and you will prove me right. Secondly, my party leader Musalia Mudavadi is on record in 2018 warning Kenyans and warning Parliament against the bill that was being passed in Parliament to tax fuel products. It is also on record. You can find out. Now, to the issue of judiciary, I want to say that, you know, there is this famous saying that says, whatever goes around comes around. In 2013, when the Supreme Court annulled the presidential vote, there is this famous phrase that President Uhuru said, that we shall revisit. Personally, I believe the judiciary never took that statement lightly. In 2017, sorry. And as the president promised to revisit, they have also revisited in equal measure. And if you ask me, personally, I believe the biggest problem this government, this Jubilee government has had is the AG. I think this government will go on record as one government that has lost the highest number of cases in court. We never saw such things during Kibaki regime, and we never saw such during Moi's days. And I think the problem that we have between the state and the judiciary is purely lack of communication. The former CJ, we are all aware he was not in very good books with the state. I think perhaps because of that judgment or whatever, or his personal beliefs vis-a-vis what the president believes in. But also, I think the government, and specifically the head of state, is also contributing to this. Because even yesterday, during the Mashujaa Day, if you listen to his statement, there is something he said in relation to corruption, and said that it doesn't matter how many court orders you will receive. Meaning, to him, whether you have a court order or not, he will not respect it. Now, when you say such a statement in the presence of the Chief Justice, because the Chief Justice was in that function, and Kenyans, we were watching, it shows actually how he has this habit of not obeying court orders. And I think it is that lack of obedience to the court orders, which you have seen in many cases. There are so many court orders that have been issued, which the president never listened to. And I think it is that disobedience to these court orders that have even now made the judges more repulsive to the state. Because every case that we've seen going to the courts, the state is losing. Yes. And the most famous one, the BBI. You saw a whole bench of 7 judges, almost 5 of them agreeing on almost everything, and only 2 dissenting. That was a landmark ruling. And you see, this was a project. And if you listen to that statement, the judgment that was read, and you listen to the wording, exact wordings, the judges were actually talking to the president direct. Because they even said, yes, they said this was a state project, not a citizen initiative. Meaning it was actually a president's project in collaboration with his brother, Raila Odinga. So what we are saying is, it is high time the president learns to respect the courts, because what we are told in law is that once a judgment has been made, it is binding, whether you agree with it or not. So it is just upon us to learn to accept these court orders. Because now what the president is doing is that if he cannot respect the court orders, he's setting a precedence, even to the incoming president, or even to us Kenyans. Because why would you expect the citizens to obey court orders, but the government cannot obey court orders? So I think that is where the problem is, and it is something that needs really to be worked on, because we cannot have a country that believes in the rule of law, but where you can't respect court orders.
Yes, and you know, the AG literally, there are just 3 scenarios here. 1, the AG Kihara Kariuki is misadvising the president. 2, his advices have simply not been taken in by the president. Or 3, he's simply not advising the president at all. Would you say either of those 3 choices is the right one? Maybe
before I answer what you're asking me, you know, I know it, and also, as my brother says, this is a very serious show where Kenyans are watching. And first of all, he has mentioned about ODM MPs. I'm ODM. And it will be wrong, even when they're looking at me, like, you know, our brothers in ANC, they've kept on crying. I don't know why. Every time they're crying, even over nothing. We have not been called, we have not been informed, we have not. It is wrong. We talk about ODM MPs in parliament, ganged up with Jubilee MPs, pro-handshake. Where were they, this ANC? Why could they not gang up with Tanga or whatever, and then they fail the bills? No.
So you agree?
We should not
together and warn because of numbers.
Know, why MPs go to parliament? And they go to parliament. You are talking about, you cannot keep on accusing a particular party, pointing fingers all the time that ODM. Raila.
But here is not pointing fingers.
You know, you talk about the bill. Where were they? Are you saying that ANC MPs were not in parliament?
They opposed.
Did they oppose?
They opposed.
And if they
the
opposed,
Hansard is there.
If they opposed it, who are these? You know, we cannot come out after something has happened in parliament, come out and start crying it outside. Things happen in parliament. Why can they not sponsor another bill in that parliament? Leave alone that. We come back to where he has mentioned about Raila Amolo Odinga and the brother on BBI. Were with these people dancing the issue of BBI? Were they just camouflaging around us? And actually, just like YSG says, our brothers, when they're short, we are not going to kneel down for them to climb on our backs, for them to arrive where they want to go. We were there in BBI, all of us. Musalia Mudavadi was there.
It was your project.
In BBI. Now it is our project. Because it failed, it now becomes our project. But if it could have gone through, it could have become all of us project. We'll advise our brothers in ANC that they better take position right now. The world is running. They will keep on crying the way they're crying right now. And next year, when we shall be sworn in parliament again, in State House, they'll still be crying. They either join Tanga or join Raila Amolo Odinga. It's simple and very clear. Or they go on their own. We see them.
Yeah.
You cannot say the way, and I don't want to be abusive or anything. What these people are doing, I think, they're not serious if they really want to become presidents of this country. I think this is just a joke.
But I think he has admitted
they're warming up.
Together and had numbers that
they're
passed
actually
the bill.
warming up. They're actually warming up.
That increased the taxes.
Fine. I go back.
That is clear.
I go back to the issue of maybe is actually the Attorney General is actually misadvising the president. I will not say that he's misadvising the president, because I do not know the kind of advice he's giving the president. And for sure, it is the law. When a case goes to court and the court decides that the law has not been followed, that is the court. And we shall give, I'm not going to discuss what is in court. That one I choose not to discuss what is in court. I'll only choose to say that actually there has been a tug of war between all along when Maraga was there. Maybe some of those judges are also human beings. We should not think that they're demagogues and think that they have the ultimate power. They can say things that are also not right. So on the issues of the court, we give them the battle, they can continue, and then we see how it ends. But the president, when he talked about he has referred to the president in Warungu Stadium, where he said in Mashujaa that is not even with court orders. The president was referring to the international court that says that we should actually relinquish to Somali. He was not referring to the AG. Fine, he was going to come and argue that maybe the president disrespects the courts and court orders. On what he said on Mashujaa, it was purely on the territorial judgment that was done in the international court, not on what our CJ, Martha Koome, is going to do. The court has ruled. Let's wait and see what the president is going to do. 14 days have not elapsed. We cannot come and castigate him that for sure is not going to appoint. Maybe he has received a clear report. He might appoint them within 14 days. If he doesn't, let the law take its course.
You know, my brother here, since they lost the BBI case, they have equally...
Yes, was for the bill.
Now, you know,
it is now us.
If you read the case that was in court, it was clear kwamba BBI was initiated by two people.
No, Musale is not there. But he was riding,
the other leaders
he was riding on the fruits of the BBI.
But the initiators of BBI was Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta.
The initiators of BBI were Junet Mohammed and
that was dismissed. Those were proxies. That was dismissed. It is on record.
Yes.
My brother here has seen they lost the BBI case. You cannot expect him to be very favorable to the judges because they also have a feeling the judges were not right in dismissing the BBI case. But the truth of the matter is, any court order, whether local or international, must be obeyed by all. That's the bottom line. So whether the president was talking about the ICJ ruling or the Kenyan ruling or whatever ruling, the law is very clear. Any court that we have a treaty to obey the orders, we must obey. And that's why in 2013, we obeyed the ICC summons and they went to the ICC. So we cannot say it was right for us to go to the ICC, but it is wrong for us to obey the ICJ ruling.
We went to the ICC after we failed to actually have a law call. That is how we found ourselves to ICC. We took ourselves to ICC. ICC did not come to us. We went to ICC ourselves. Let us not be vague. Let us go to Hague. If you do not remember.
And who led that chorus?
Quickly, as we conclude, gentlemen, I'd love to get your final thoughts on just what are the options of the Chief Justice Martha Koome as of now. Yes. When she was having an interview after the 100 days in office, she talked about the Constitution stipulates that the moment they have vetted the judges and they have been, the names have been submitted to the President for appointment, the Judiciary Service Commission is functus officio, does not have the capacity to act or make any other decision. So the courts yesterday said that if President Uhuru Kenyatta does not appoint the judges, his office will be functus officio. I mean, what options really does the Chief Justice have? Will she side with the judiciary or will probably on President's side?
It is not about siding. It is doing her job. The ruling of yesterday is very clear that within 14 days, the President is supposed to appoint those judges. And in the event that he doesn't do it, it will be presumed that his power to appoint has expired. So what it will mean is that the CJ has to swear in the judges. That's what the judgment says. Unless the state again goes back, because I think it was a high court.
Yes.
Unless the state again appeals now to the Court of Appeal.
Quickly, CJ Koome's options.
CJ Koome's option, she has no options. The option that is there is what the court gave her. Or, as my brother says, actually the government goes back to the High Court. Yes. She's the president of those judges. Yeah. And actually, you cannot say that she swore to actually obey the constitution of the office that she's holding. Now, it will be up to her to actually uphold that constitution, to lay actually a precedent to others who are going to come after her. Yes.
Thank you very much for your time. I know you have so much to say and you've left so much unsaid, but we can always have this conversation. The next time on my immediate right has been Wycliffe Alutalala, an MC aspirant under the ANC party ticket. And on my farthest right, John Mukoya, the ODM youth leader. Thank you very much, gentlemen, once again for your time. This has been The Talk Point. Remember, every Friday at 9 p.m. we bring this show for you. We have candid and factual conversations just to make it make sense for you. Thank you very much for your company. I'm Cynthia Nanjala. Good night.